Thank you so much. 3 days ago, I stood at ground zero, the very spot where 10 years ago, my husband David's life, along with thousands of others, ended so abruptly. Looking down on that sacred ground, once a crater of destruction, now springing to life, the towers are under construction and the beautiful 9/11 memorial is complete. I was overcome by feelings of loss, anger, and helplessness. How is it possible that Dave, a wonderful husband, father, son, brother, and friend, had his life cut short at the age of 33? How is it possible that he never even met his beautiful daughter Dina, and that he didn't live to see the incredible young people that our children have become? But feelings are complicated, because I also felt pride, happiness, love, and strength. I knew within the first moments of widowhood that I would move forward. I would not get stuck in a place of anger and hate. Dave would not have wanted me to focus on death, but instead to look to the future, toward life. My fellow riders and I have had an exhilarating 3 days winding our way through the streets of Manhattan, up the hilly suburbs of Connecticut, and ever northward toward Dover. There we were joined by 150 other cyclists as we continued here to the beautiful banks of the Charles River. It's good to be home. But our journey was not easy. We encountered many obstacles along the way. Flat tires, huge hills, leg cramps, pure exhaustion, for me, 1 concussion and a broken clavicle. But just like in life, we make a series of choices along the way. We chose to continue our journey, moving forward. Even when we thought we didn't have an ounce of energy left, we encouraged each other. We supported one another. We banded together and made what at times seemed impossible, possible. The generosity of spirit buoyed us up, pushing us over the tough hills until we achieved our goal of standing here today. 10 years since 9/11, I clearly recognized the power of this kind of support. After Dave was killed, I was rescued by the love of my family, my friends, and hundreds of strangers I would never meet who showered us with cards and letters and gifts filled with compassion and support. People cooked us meals, sent us beautiful handmade quilts, a neighbor cut my grass week after week. The list goes on and on. Those acts of kindness became a lifeline. They became a blanket of security, of safety and security that allowed me to pick up my head and move beyond the 11th. That type of support enabled me to pause and look across oceans and continents to widows in Afghanistan. Although they lived thousands of miles away in a culture that couldn't be more different than ours, I couldn't help but think, who supports these women when their husbands die? Who will help lift them out of hopelessness and despair? I knew that I could help just one. That was the initial idea of Beyond the 11th. Provide support for one widow and her children the way so many had reached out to help me. Help a woman in a different country who had been affected by the very same terrorist network as my family and my country. Fortunately, we have been able to help many more than just one. When people learn about the work of Beyond the 11th, they sometimes ask, why help them over there? Initially, I was surprised at this response, but I've come to realize that often our first reaction is to see the differences in people. When you focus on all that is different, it is much easier to be indifferent and look away. Once you notice the similarities, it's much easier to recognize that people everywhere are simply trying to move through this life with dignity and in peace. When I had the opportunity to go to Afghanistan and meet many women who, just like me, had been widowed at a young age, who were trying to raise families the best they could, I realized that the common thread of motherhood makes us far more alike than different. I have looked these women in the eyes and have seen myself in them. Perhaps they have looked me in the eye and seen themselves reflected there too. I am a mother who wants my children to live in peace and security, to have access to health care and education. I want my children to grow up to be happy, kind, successful people in this world. I believe that I would want these things for my children, whether I was born here in the United States or in Afghanistan. These ideals are not American. They are human. They are universal. The work of Beyond the 11th is not simply the act of serving one widow at a time. It is also the surest way I know to fight the war on terror. We are not going to win the war on terror simply with bombs and bullets. We can't literally force the world to be our friends. We must actively befriend the world. We must look outside our borders and recognize that we are all connected. To think otherwise is foolish. 9/11 created an exceptional moment of unity in our country, and for me, it forever changed my life. It caused me to pause, to consider those beyond our borders. It brought me into great focus that indifference to our shared humanity allowed the 9/11 terrorists to do what they did. Faced with that indifference, I could respond in kind, I could turn inward and reject everything that seemed foreign and unknown, or I could choose action, just as so many people across our country chose action in reaching out to me, a woman they did not know. I chose to use that loving energy that had cradled and lifted me up in the darkest moments of my life and somehow put it out into the world. 10 years ago today, we lost so much. But we are not here just to remember the great losses. We are also here to recognize the decency, the bravery, and the love that grew out of that catastrophe. In 10 years, so many have done so much to overcome the hatred of a few. Today we celebrate that spirit of selflessness. We celebrate all the humble acts of caring by strangers for those in need. Because in the end, none of us really are strangers. We are all connected. We must all be caretakers of our shared humanity. On this day of remembrance, I remember my husband David. I remember a life that no longer is mine. On this day of remembrance, I know love and I wish for peace. Thank you.